doesn't change. Whether you've been here, 5, 6 years like Joe has, or you're in your first 90 days, it's the same message, the same process. And sticking to the fundamentals and setting the proper expectations for that client when you connect with them, it can be very intimidating and very nerve-wracking. And you're about to try and help a family and you want to make sure you got all your ducks in a row, but it really just comes back to the process and you running an efficient professional appointment to help that family. So I've just been thinking a lot about that lately with all of our new team members and want to get back to the basics and help as many new people as possible and help you as you're growing your teams as well.
David, in saying that, right, also something I love to remind new agents, because we do have, I told you, look, see, this is like a record for us. If you post it, it's like a record. I think we're going to have to utilize you posting more. We got 64 agents on this call. But, one of the things I do notice as a new agent, or I love to remind them, is being okay not knowing. Right? Like, I think that is so, so important, right? Like, I hope y'all hear that, right? Like, it's okay not to know everything going into the appointment, right? Now, here's the thing, though. You should know the basics of how to run an appointment and do everything that you can, right, to make sure you're properly prepped for it. And what I mean by that, right, is one, utilizing your upline, right? We're going to go over really just about every basic thing to make sure you have a proper appointment. But here's the biggest thing that I can tell y'all to decrease the stress of, I'm going to mess up this. It's okay to not know everything. You're not supposed to. In fact, the system is designed for you not to know anything about underwriting, right? Anything about the product that you're about to show, anything about the insurance company, because you're just going to hurt yourself and you're going to get to think about it, trying to learn something brand new on product. And next thing you know, you're running an appointment and all of a sudden, right, you're only saying what you just learned, right, David, which is, hey, so and this policy, it's going to have, right, this thing is built into it and it has so much right, it's a whole life and you're going to get a percentage of this, and and because you focused on the product, you totally miss the reason why you're sitting with the family. Right? Because
Absolutely.
like think about that, right? Because we're so brand new, we want to focus on, hey, I just learned this policy and this is the one I'm going to show, right? And we focus on the policy instead of focusing on the family, right? And I remember Chris Cook, dude, I could never forget this, and this was like the funniest, but the best thing he could have ever told me. He goes, Joe, he goes, it's super simple what we do in the products we do, right? And right, we help with mortgage protection. How does it work? And it's simple, right? It's you pass away, it pays your beneficiary. That's it.
Yeah.
Keep it that simple. Everything else is great benefits. They're absolutely amazing products, right? But guess what? They don't need to know that much specific stuff. The reason they booked an appointment and want to sit with you is because, David, if Mary passes away, right, she wants to know, right, that her husband's taken care of, and then vice versa, right? The husband wants to make sure if he passes away, Mary's taken care of. They are not, no one how many of y'all have sat with an appointment, right? And you ask them, what do you have? And they literally every single time say, I have no idea.
Yep.
I have, I don't even know, right? Somewhere like 30, I don't know. They said it's a little policy, right? Like they couldn't tell you the company name, how much is for, right? Like what it, like nothing. And I want y'all to remember that, right? Because they still purchased that right before you. Because guess what? They just wanted to solve the very simple problem that if something happens, that someone's protected. And keep that super simple. And we're going to give y'all some really good nuggets today of keeping it that simple and that basic, right? But so important, because this is how you simply help a family, right? Like Tequila, I love what you were saying earlier, right? Like it was just like I was just looking to help them. That's it, right? Like it was a really big app, and let me tell you, when you keep it super basic and simple, hey, I'm just trying to do what's right for you. You'll be amazed of how all of a sudden the applications get so big. because you uncover the true need and their true reason, right? And so I'm excited about this one. So
Can I just add something, Joe, real quick?
rock and roll, buddy.
The absolute biggest shift in our production, when I say our, Donnell and I, the biggest shift in our production occurred when we finally grasped the concept that this is an emotional sale, not a financial sale. As soon as we could wrap our head around, we need to tap into the emotional side of this experience, the dollars and cents will take care of themselves, almost to an irrelevant measure, because this is such an emotional process.
Yeah, and something you said in a couple of calls ago, is like I don't even say the cents.
Yeah.
Because he was like, hey, it's gonna be around $38.
Mhm.
Right. And I love that because you truly have grasped the concept, right? Of they don't care about the little things, right? They just want to know, like, hey, you're helping me put some protection in place, right? Like so many of us are I can't tell you how many calls I've gotten over the years of agents. They would be like, oh my God, I accidentally told them it's 43.79 and it's really 42.90. Like, I think I'm gonna lose the app. Like, you ain't gonna lose the app, right? Like, they don't like dollars, like 5, 10, $20 means nothing, right? Like, and this is why I love to talk about that with the agents because like even the products, right? Like, hey, why do we start with Americo first, right? I think it's a little bit pricier than Mutual of Omaha, right? Because I'm like, it's because it's a simpler process and you're gonna enjoy that process, and so is your client, right? And they're like, but it's cheaper for the client. I'm like, nah, it's not cheaper. It may be cheaper in dollars, but it's not cheaper in the process, right? Like you could lose somebody in an app. Like I can't tell you how many agents call me and be like, hey, we're stuck with this application. I can't get a signature. I can't do this. I can't do that, right? Because the client is having a little tougher time, right? And when y'all truly grasp that concept, I love that you said that, right? This is an emotional sell. If you run a proper appointment and go through the process that we're going to talk about today, like you will be amazed of how many more yeses come through, how many more higher APVs you get in your applications, right? And you'll be amazed. Like if you start running it's super cool. I would say, and Danelle and David, y'all jump in, and James or anyone really, right? Like when you're on your A game, right? Because here's the thing, like you start running more and more appointments, like you're gonna run that one appointment, like man, that was a really good appointment, right? Whether you get a yes or a no, it doesn't matter. But you're like, man, I did a really good job. Like I'm proud of myself, right? About halfway through the appointment, like the client's like, yeah, no, like let's just do that. Like that's what I want. Like let's just do that. Like some of the price hasn't even been talked about, right? Or very little has been explained, and they're like, no, that's exactly what I want. I'm glad you said that, right? And it's because we're just simply trying to help the family, right? Like we're not worried about what the prices I'm going to show, right? Is it equity protection or is it the full payoff of the home, right? Like they hear that that you truly care about their situation and the emotion is through the roof, right? Like they're like David or Danelle, right? Like they want to help me. Like I trust them. Like just tell me what what do people do, Joe? Like I love that. I get that so much. Like, well, what do most folks do? Right? Like, well, they do this. Okay, let's just do that. That's what I want to do. Right. And Sam, you got your hand up.
I just wanted to add on to what David said, and for any new agents on the call, just like David said, it's really tapping into that emotion, but it's simply just following the real script and listening to what your client is saying to you. I remember when I was a new agent, I didn't do that all the time. But when I did, that's when I wrote an application. And it's just it because I was always like worried about, well, what product and what, right? Like your mind's going. But if you just follow the real script, listen to what they're saying, guess what, you guys, any new agents on here, you can call your upline in the appointment and they can help you with anything else. So I just want to say for any new agents, just don't worry about some of the other stuff. Just focus on the real script, listen to your client, and your upline can help you in the middle of the appointment which I didn't really know in the beginning. And I think it would have gone smoother for me in the beginning if I had done that. So just
And
a
it's
little
so cool now because if you're in the workroom, right? So like if you're running an appointment, right, and you're in the workroom, the ability to now just unmute and have 20 people to answer a question, I'm just telling y'all it's priceless, right? And what do I mean by that is one, you got to make sure you have the setup for it. So I do love to talk about that, right? Like, so right now y'all see me on my computer, on my desktop, right? So either this is your laptop or your computer, and this is how you're running your Zoom appointment. But remember, you can always be in the workroom on your phone, right, through Zoom. Or like I have an iPad with a little stand, so I can always do both for everyone. But realize that that will benefit y'all a lot as well. Because if you're in the workroom running an appointment, right, you can be muted, right, and you're still running your appointment. But listen to the instant, right, like and you know what? When I really saw that, like this was such a great tool. Is Deanna does this so well. Like Deanna will be in the workroom, like she's muted and she's running the appointment, right? She's never talking, but she'll just unmute, like, "Hey guys, I'm in the appointment, and they're telling me this, like, what I go from here." And then right, there's like 5 people ready to volunteer, right? Like, "Hey, let's do this, this, and this." And then she goes back, "Okay, great." Right? And she mutes back, and then she'll unmute later. She goes, "Got it." Right? So I'm just, that's a great tool. I don't think we utilize it enough. So I just wanted to bring that up too, because there's a whole bunch of things we put together for y'all to make it super easy. So let's jump into this. I like on the text, David, you put one of the first things that I love to talk about. And I think it's usually the first wall that an agent has as they're starting to help and sit with families, right? And when I say the first wall, and this is at the sits, right? Because remember, if you're brand new, your first wall is going to be you need to find out how to sit with families, right? Go dial a whole bunch, book a whole bunch of appointments. You're going to have a ton of no-shows. But then you're going to hit your next wall, which is, hey, people are showing up and like, holy crap, I got to run an appointment now, right? And the first thing that the first mistake we make, and why I say we, because we literally every single one of us has done this, is we think we need to pay off their entire house, right? And I can't emphasize this enough. Write this down. You will probably pay off 1 to 2 out of every 10 full mortgages ever, if that. It's that little. You will very seldom pay off them for, like when you're sitting with the case and you're putting something together for them, you will very, very seldom be like, "Hey, this is your 300,000. Yep, we're paying off the entire 300,000." Very seldom. Okay, it's not common, right? If depending on where you live, some of the demographics might, your numbers might be a little bit better, but very right. Just put that in your head. Very seldom we pay off the entire. That's not our job. Right. And I think that's one of the biggest walls I want y'all to overcome, right? Our job is not to pay off their full mortgage, right? Like realize that's what the form says, but the form also says, right, based on, right, these, criteria, right, you're going to qualify for the full mortgage payoff or partial, right? You're going to have benefits if qualified, right? We're going to have, right, maybe accidental options, right? You could qualify for this and all this stuff, right? But nowhere in there does it say, "Hey, call us and we will 100% pay off your entire mortgage." That's not what we do, right? And it's not for everyone, right? Like that's why we're so big on the pivot and listening to the client and actually helping them what they want. What our job is, right? And David, it was funny because I learned this, that I was saying this to one of our agents about 2 years ago. He goes, "Man," he goes, "why didn't you just tell me that from the beginning, Joe?" I'm like, "You know what? I don't think I clarified that at the beginning." I'm like, "You know what? I think you're right." Right. And he goes, and he started writing so many applications afterwards. He goes, when you told me my job is not to pay off their mortgage, but my job is to simply find them the most amount of coverage for the least amount of premium based on their age and health," he goes, "that was clarity for me." Right? He goes, for that was huge. I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You don't understand." He goes, I wanted so hard to try to pay off their mortgage, and I was trying to add, and I had really high quotes that were over their budget, right? Because I was trying to even max out a final expense policy. He goes, "I just didn't understand that my job was simply to find them the most amount of coverage for the least amount of premium based on their age and health and budget.
Yeah.
Right. And he was like, man, that's so good. Right. So that's the first wall. Like y'all realize when you're about to prep for a family, right, that you're going to sit with, your job is not to pay off their full mortgage. Your job is to find them coverage, right? The most amount of coverage for the least amount of premium based on their age and health. And what that really means, right? Based on their age and health, David, you put this in the text message. He goes, something they're going to qualify for.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because everyone says, I want a $400,000 policy at 75 with a heart attack last year. Right. Like, I bet you do. Right. Like, I want it for you. Right. Like, I want it for your family more than anything. Right. Your wife that has no income and y'all are living off of your retirement. Right. Like, I want it for her too. But guess what? You ain't going to qualify for that. And my job is not to show you what you want. Right. My job is to be the professional and show you what you're going to qualify for. Right. My job is to show you the simplest process to get you qualified for the policy that has the least resistance, because this is the thing. Our clients give up on the process. Right. Like, how many of y'all have written an app, it got declined, and they're like, nah, let's just not do that. And you're like, wait, but I can do this next one, and it's a $10 difference, and it should, right? Like, you'll get qualified. And they're like, nah, let's just not do that. Right. And that's what's so important, right? Like, so many new agents get stuck on, like, well, why America first, or why this one, or why do we have it tiered that way? Because it's the least resistant path. Because I can't tell y'all, right? Like, 6 years in, I have sat with hundreds of families at this point, and I can't tell you how many families, right, got declined, right, or the app just got stuck somewhere, right? And they're like, nah, let's just not do that. I'm like, wait, but I'm like, I got you. It's okay. I'm gonna help. I'm like, nah, I knew it was gonna be a lot of work, and then it cut me off, right? Like, and it hurts my heart because, right, when they were in the motion of the appointment, they were like, holy crap, like, Mary's not in a good spot. I want to make sure I get her covered, right? But because, right, I was like, either, right, like, hey, I just want to do this client, like this company or this, right? Like, now I've learned, like, hey, there's a reason why the 5 carriers we have in that order, to simplify the process and trust me, it's for the path of least resistance, right? Alicia, you got your hand up.
Yeah, so that seems to be a big wall that I seem to consistently hit. I'm in the state of Washington, and of course we're like one of the highest in mortgages.
Right.
So
Yeah.
when I have a client who has like a $500,000 home, it's really hard to pivot or to like explain to them, I'm sorry, like you can only get, the max of 50,000 or $10,000 of coverage in your budget. So like I'm like you had said, like I guess hitting that pain point, like can Mary survive without, you know, you or your funds coming in? But even if I do that, it's still been so hard for me to still close the deal. Um, even saying that. So I don't know if what I'm doing wrong or like maybe how I'm saying it, but it seems like every single one of them where I'm trying to give them the most coverage that I can, and it hits the Eagle Premier or the Living Promise, and
They all go
they're at
that way.
that
Yeah.
age. It's so hard, and it seems like I get so many of them. But I mean, any suggestions, like other than hitting that pain point, or maybe like a way that I'm explaining it, um, besides like explaining like can so and so survive financially
Yeah.
without the
Yeah.
funds coming in.
So
Oh,
can I actually address something real quick? And then Joe, I would love for you to expand upon it.
yeah.
I love that question because that's a question we get asked all day long, and it's a very, very routine experience. I think it starts with reframing your mindset and then letting that bleed into the client's mindset, that the currency that we're talking about is not dollars, it's time. Time is the currency at play here. And when we start thinking about time as the value and time as the currency, it completely changes how we look at what we're putting in place and the reason behind it.
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
And
Thank you.
Of
yeah,
course.
and then there's two other things, if you don't mind, right? If I can ask you a few questions. One, are you showing accidentals with your equity protection?
I knew you were gonna ask that, Joe. So I don't have my I just
Health?
have life. I just have life. So the state of Washington doesn't have ADB through like America. They don't
America.
allow it here.
Yeah.
So I'm working on getting the health part of it so that I can show Moo. Um, but no.
Yeah,
I do have Michigan and Maine.
and that's the
Yeah, I
gap,
have
right?
my, yep, exactly. So I
So,
lose out on that part of it. And yeah, so Michigan and Maine I have, and I do, because I have America to kind of save me there. But the age, I mean,
well, because they
it
cut
doesn't
off
allow
at
you to get to that
62,
age.
right?
It
And
cuts
then
off.
anyone that's
Hmm.
65. So yeah, so fix that, right?
Yeah.
So anyone, right, that doesn't have a health license, highly recommend you, right? Because the being able to partner, right, that accidental with Mutual of Omaha and that equity protection, it allows you to say this right here. And this solves that a lot of that problem right there, Alicia, which is, hey, look, if we put these two together, we're going to do exactly what you wanted, which is pay off the entire mortgage, right? God forbid it's an accident, right? Because you get to go up to 500 grand, right? So you're like, hey, we're going to put these two together and we're going to do exactly what you wanted. God forbid it's an accident. We're paying off the entire mortgage for you. If not, no matter what, we have guaranteed, right? We're going to give you, right? Or we're going to give Mary 18 months of mortgage protection, right? Or whatever it may be. So that would be the first one, right? Obviously, you have that, so fix that. And then the other one is James is really good at this. Is we talked about it a couple, I don't remember which one it was, but the paint the picture and explaining to the client how they use this is really big, right? So especially like, and the reason I'm glad you said Washington, because my entire base, we all run Washington, so we have those exact same clients and we help them that way. And guess what? They don't always get the accidental, but we always get the equity protection no matter what. But it's because we're really good at painting the picture and explaining how they're going to use this product, right? And the way you explain it is exactly what David said, right? Is how do they use this for time, right? So like when you're running your appointment and you're getting to the explanation of the quotes, one, make sure you're not showing 10,000, 12,000, 15,000, making sure you're showing 18 months, 12 months, 24 months, right? So the dollar figure is a huge no, because David said it. This is not a dollar application, right? Policy. This is a time policy, right? This is gonna protect Mary for 6 months. This is gonna protect, right, Mary for 18 months. But then doing a really good job, and James, anything you can speak to this because you're better at this than me, is talking about how they're gonna use it, right? And kind of explaining that, like, hey, Mary, right, John passes away, right? So now we know, right, we're going to get this policy, right? It's for 18 months and it's right. You're going to get a full check of, right, let's just say $18,000, right, which is 18 months. But now you're going to be able to have that. Hey, and guess what? I know we talked about we don't have any life insurance. I know y'all said y'all were thinking of cremation. So even though we have 18,000 here, right, like being very specific of what they're going to do with this and how it's going to help them, right? Like, hey, you know what? You'll be able to do your cremation. I know you said you already have a plan in place and it's only going to be 3,500, right? So you'll be able to take that out of there, or I can add it to it, right? To make sure we still have your full 18 months. And then, right, John's gone. We know, right? Every single month you have you have 18 months worth of figuring out what's the next step. A lot of folks can either refinance, right? Or, right, if you're asking really good questions, and we're going to go into that in a little bit, right? Right, like, you're going back to your kid's house, right, that live in Michigan or wherever they may be. So just really teaching them, right, like, again, we only sell two products, a term and a whole life, and it doesn't matter what you're showing them. It's the concept. Mortgage protection is a concept. When y'all truly grasp that, you'll be able to pitch it, right? I don't want to say the word sell. You'll be able to pitch it properly, right? We only use a term or a whole life, but mortgage protection, equity protection, that's why there's so many names, right? You'll hear us say, I like to say payment protection, right? Like this is your payment program, right? But what we're doing is we're still just pitching a concept, right? And the concept is time protection, right? Like this is going to give you blank amount of, right, X amount of months, X amount of years, whatever it may be, right? And then if they're lucky, if they're healthy enough, and right, hey, the concept is, right, it pays off the entire house, right? So I hope that helps.
Time to breathe and time to grieve.
Yep. I like that one. That was a good question. Thank you.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes, sir.
Please.
So I'm watching you, Joe, and you probably don't even know you're doing this, but I need people to see what you're doing, your head nods, your hand gestures, and everything goes back here. Like, that's so important. And when you're explaining, critical period, and I guess anything like throughout the whole appointment, and that's why Zoom is so important, that they do see your body language, your hand gestures, facial expressions, and all of that. So it's the only thing I wanted to point out.
Yeah, no, because I do that so much, right? In the point, especially like equity protection, like, hey, we're gonna have 5 months, right? And when he passes away, right, we're gonna be able to bridge that gap, right? You're gonna have plenty of time, right? We're gonna have 6 months worth of protection for you, right? So that you can decide, right, whatever. And then I'm even doing, right, and this goes for anything, right? Because when I'm showing them, right, like, hey, as time passes, right, your policy's always gonna stay the same, right? And your what you owe on the house is going down, right? And then this becomes an extra benefit of life insurance, right? So you're starting to get that gap bigger and bigger as you're paying down your mortgage, and you're also solving another problem, right? So that's why mortgage protection nowadays, right, is way better than the old version, right? So the hand, right, and this is all Jeremy Minor stuff, but that's why Zoom, right? You can't beat Zoom. Just telling you off for that. Thanks for bringing that up. So anything before we move on, David, on right, our job again is to simply find them the most amount of coverage for the least amount of premium based on their age and health, not to pay off the mortgage. Our job is just to simply find something that they're going to qualify for, right?
I just wanted to touch something for Alicia. I know you say you don't have your health license yet, but for now you could use also AMAM has one if you're contracted with AMAM. They have a security protector. They only have 3 options, but at least it'll help you out for now until you get yours. They have it goes up to 300,000. They have 3 options: 100,000, 200, and 300,000. So I would definitely put those in place for those to get those full mortgages, complete, and be like, hey, this is a program. You do half of this and then this. You know what I mean?
What's
What
the age?
product was that again, James?
It goes up to the age of 60.
It goes up to 62, but I believe, I'm not sure. I believe it'll let you write it in Washington. They're good.
It will.
Okay.
Which product is that?
Okay.
Security protector, I believe, something like that.
Mhm.
Thank you. MM, right?
It's a MM.
Right, but highly suggest, right?
Yeah.
Go get y'all's health license. Stop pushing.
Definitely get your,
because
you're gonna run into.
Going to save you because you get to go up to $500,000, right? And then
and those are the ones you need it the most when you're getting,
equity protection.
the 65, 70, the 65 to 70. Those are the ones that want it more though, because they're ready to buy, but they don't have anything in the budget. And that one is going to help you at least walking out without a goose egg on there, because they see the value in that. At least, hey, at this point, I'm a 50-50 chance. And, as you become older, you're just more accident prone. So it's even more of a risk for them as they become older.
It does say with AMM, it's not available in that state.
It's not.
Washington.
Yeah, it's because it's got the it's
because it's a life one. Yeah, it's the same as
yeah, it's because it's a term with the AD.
Correct. Yeah.
Does it give information about health restrictions as well?
No,
Yeah,
it's just accidental.
because they're a health. It's a life one. It's not a health. That's why you have to.
Okay, got you. It's a life for MM.
It's like it's just like the America one. So that's why you can't do it.
Got you. Okay, I missed
that one.
that.
You could still get declined on those if you had no aware of those, because it's a life product as well. So you can still get declined if they have a bad record or something. So that one's not guaranteed like the MOO one either.
Health license it is.
Mhm.
All right. So next, right? We know that, and we know how we're going to help a family, right? We're no longer thinking of, right, I'm trying to pay off their full house, but now it's going into the concept, right, of keeping it super simple, right? And we're gonna go in order of your appointment, right, of how you should be doing it. So we're gonna start with the beginning, right, of, hey, you got them, and guess what you got to do at the very beginning is you got to build rapport, right? Like you got to make sure they like you and they trust you, right? The big word is trust. And I think trust is built. Sometimes we think like, hey, I'm making them laugh and they like me, but they still may not trust you. Remember, trust is built on they know you, right? So one of the biggest things, right, that I can give y'all as a nugget in rapport building is making sure you're making deposits before you're making withdrawals, right? So if you're asking a question about something about their family or their, right, like you should divulge information about yourself, right? Like this is an emotional sell and they want to love you, right? Like they want to trust you. And so you got to give information. They know everything about us when we finish an appointment, right? Like if I'm running an appointment with you, you're going to find out I got 4 kids, right? I've been divorced twice, right? Like you're going to find out we love to kayak. You're going to find out like everything that I can possibly ask of you, I'm going to give you of me, right? We're going to finish this appointment as best friends. Because when you call me in a week and I see your phone number, I'm not scared, right? Like how many of y'all see your client call you and you're like, oh, I don't want to pick up that phone number, right? And it's because you're scared they're gonna say, hey, I need to cancel that policy, right? Like that's just what it is. And I tell y'all that because I used to think that, right? Like I was like, oh, I'm not answering that. I'm gonna let that puppy go to voicemail, see what happens, right? And I'm not afraid anymore, right? Like if they're calling, they want to talk to Joe, right? So the rapport building is really big. And David, you put some really good stuff in there, which was, right, making sure you're guiding the rapport, right?
Yes.
Because yes, you know, like if I sat with David and I'm looking at his background, look, this guy's a sports guy, right? So yes, I'm gonna go into some sports stuff, right? That's how I'm gonna break down some of the walls, right? We teach our 15 questions, right? At least for me, the time frame is I want 10 minutes of rapport. I don't want more than that. I don't want less than that. 10 minutes by the 6th to 8th minute, they should be doing more of the talking than you, right? Because when you start building rapport and you first talk, right? And James, let's run this real quick, right? You know, the dry spell, right? That we talk about, right? This is what it sounds like at the very beginning with some of your questions. And this is what you got to get past. Like, hey, James, so where are you from?
Texas,
That's it, right? He just gives me one short answer. Oh, okay. Well, what part?
San Antonio.
Right. Oh, okay. Well, how long have you lived there?
I've been there my whole life.
Okay. And you know, now we're in Arizona. So when did you move or what brought you out here?
Just got into the insurance. My brother.
Okay. In insurance? So you work with your brother?
Yeah, I work with my brother. Yeah.
How's that?
Some days are better than others, you know.
Have you worked with him before, or what made that happen?
I worked actually always worked with them before.
Really?
Yeah.
Like where?
The restaurant industry. Probably worked together about 11 years, 10 years. And then he ended up moving.
Now they start talking, right? Like now they start, right? And y'all have to understand, you got to give them that opportunity, right? Because I'm telling y'all, it's crazy. It's usually by the 7th or 8th question. It happens every time. They're very dry. Oh yeah.
And the key thing is once they start talking, don't interrupt them. Let them talk. Don't feel like you have to be in control or talking a lot into its time. Like when you're rapport building, let them talk. Let them tell their story. And
Yeah.
don't think you have to do a better story than them either. Because I've seen that also happen. Where like, oh hey, I got this, I'm doing this. I'm like, whoa, I did this better. Like you're not there to compete with them.
Yeah,
So
and it's super cool, right? Like play that game, right? Again, I tell all our agents, right? 15 questions in, by the 7th or 8th question, right? Which is usually by the 6th to 8th minute, you should be that far in, right? But play that game, right? Like dig until they start talking by themselves, right? Because they'll get to the point where they're getting comfortable, right? They've already given you X, right? And then in between there, right, feel free to give them your stuff, right? Be like, oh, okay. Because it'll be normally, right? And I just should use James as an example, but normally be like, oh, James, so you're from Texas?
Yeah, I'm from Texas.
Oh, me too. I'm from San Antonio myself. What part are you from?
Well, San Antonio's too.
Oh, sweet. And I see now you're in Arizona. I moved out here about 17 years ago. When did you move out here?
About 3.5 years, going on 4.
Oh, sweet. And what brought you out here?
Uh, Change position, just something different. Work.
Nice.
My family's out here.
Work is exactly what brought me over here too. I used to be in the restaurant business, and that's what brought me out here first, and then I got into the right. But do you hear the difference, right? Now they're not now they're not just completely dry, and I'm not just interrogating him. I'm giving him feedback. He doesn't even have to ask me the question. I already know what I'm going to ask, so I'm divulging that information first, and that brings his wall even way down, because how is he not going to answer the question? And I just told him where I moved from. Right? And then you get to start controlling the conversation from there, right? Because so like I'll go back to David, right? I started the conversation with I saw sports, right? So oh, basketball, dude, I love it. My team's the San Antonio Spurs, right? Have have you seen Wembanyama, right?
Oh man, totally. He's a freak. It's amazing.
Right. I love it, dude. Who's your team? Who's your NBA team?
I mean, grew up a Bulls fan, but I'm just a LeBron lover. So wherever LeBron goes, that's my team.
Man, I love me some LeBron, except when he's playing against the Spurs. I'm not gonna lie.
Right, right.
I love it. I love it. So, so LeBron. So where did you live before? How did you become a LeBron lover?
Just been a big fan, growing up in the Midwest, been in St. Louis my whole life. We don't have a team of our own. So growing up, just followed the best, which was the Bulls. And LeBron being from Ohio, gotta love a guy from a small market.
Love it, love it. So you've been there forever. So is this a new house for you or a refinance?
Yeah, brand new house. Just moved in a couple months ago.
Awesome, congratulations. So new build or was it already built?
No, it was already built. It was already
Nice.
built. Yeah.
And how many bedrooms?
It's a 4 bedroom. Yeah, 4 bedrooms. Got, one for each of the kids, and my wife lets me sleep in the bedroom sometimes as well. So it's kind of
Nice,
nice.
nice. Mine sometimes too, right? When I behave, so or
Yeah,
when I cook dinner. I love
exactly.
it. And so how many kids do you have?
We have 3 kids. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'll interrupt you here, right?
Yep.
But this is where we transition, right? I started with his sports. I had him, right? He got a little excited about what he's passionate about, right? But now I've transitioned to information I need,
Yep.
right?
None
Like
of
I
these
know,
are, yeah, none of these are throwaway questions. And that's the biggest thing to dial into. It sounds like idle chit chat, but nothing is a throwaway. Every question has intentionality behind it.
yeah. And we call it guided questions. What was the phrase you used? I liked what you used. What you text in there?
Well, it's gathering information to put bullets in your gun.
There you go. James like that. He likes to go shooting.
Yeah, yeah.
Right,
But
but it's gathering ammunition, right? Like you have to be one, right? A question or a lot of new agents be like, how do I not run a 2-hour appointment, right? Well, it's making sure if you're building rapport, right? It's tactical rapport, right? Like are you paying attention to what you're asking, right? Because let me tell you, as a new agent, I would sit down and I had the 2-hour appointments because I was sitting down talking about the Spurs for 15 minutes, right? Even though that was great rapport, right? It helped me nothing in my appointment versus, yes, I touched on it. It allowed me to get that rapport and bring down his wall, but then I went to tactical information, right? And it's so important, right? A great exercise, one, they're already in the script, right? Because one of the questions, like, what questions do I ask? Go pull up the script, and there's a whole bunch of really good questions, right? And then another great little exercise that I love to do is, what do you know about your best friend? Right? So what do you know about your best friend? Write down those questions, right? Make him questions. What do you know about him? Where does he live? Where did he used to work? right? Why did he move where he is? Well, how many kids they have? What are the names of the kids? What are their favorite sports, right? What do they do for fun? What did they used to do for work, right? Why did they move where they move? Who are they with? How long have they been with them, right? Like these are all those are, write those questions down, right? What do you know about your best friend? And that's the best way to build rapport. And the reason why I love to use best friend, because if you ask that question, if you ask those questions, that's the best ammunition that you can possibly put in your gun when you get into the report, into the appointment, because guess what? You're going to be able to solve their problem, right? Because you know how many kids, where did they live, why did they move where they moved from, right? And that's going to allow you to pivot in the appointment and make sure you have the best options and the best solution for them, because you truly know their situation, right? And you simply did it by making a best friend.
That's right. That's right. I just want to add something really, really quick. Jessica put something so strong in the chat. I don't even know if she realized how good that was. Clients are very talkative because when we build strong rapport, we just open up and we make a friend. One great way to kind of, forgive the expression, but shut it down and keep the, keep the wheels on the track is to just find a spot of interruption and say something like, "Oh my God, Jessica, I am having so much fun getting to know you." And you put a little chuckle in your voice. "I'm having so much fun getting to know you, but I want to be super, super respectful of your time today. So just to set the agenda for our conversation," and it pivots right where you want to go.
Yeah, I love that. One of my favorite phrases to teach y'all is when you're building really good rapport, right? Usually if I hear this, right, in between my 10 minutes, because at 10 minutes, I'm going to do what David just said. I'm going to cut it off at that point, right? I'm like, man, right, whatever they said last, right, I'll laugh at that little part and be like, hey, I want to be respectful of your time, right? I forgot I'm here to do a job, right? And then I'll go into my appointment, right? And I'll teach you what that looks like. But, right, my favorite phrase, if you hear this, I'm telling you, you got an application. Oh, and it's them saying this, right? So you're building your rapport and you're going through it and they're talking and they're laughing. And then they're like, oh, I'm sorry, David. I forgot, I'm over here rambling, right? Like you were supposed to tell me something about insurance or something, right? I forgot we're in an appointment, right? Because they're like, holy crap, like I forgot I'm in an appointment. I was just talking to a friend, right? Like that when I started
Collect the
hearing that,
signature.
dude, that's the shit. Like, oh, I got a nap. I'm like, let's run this. I'm like, sweet. Well, my role and purpose today, right, in our appointment is to, right, and then I go through my role and purpose, and right, so make it a game to get to those positions, right, in that 10-minute slot. Do not go more than 10 minutes. Any more than that, you just running an hour and a half, right, 2-hour appointment, right? You got to be able to control that conversation. Now, here's the cool part. When you finish your presentation and you go into the application, you can go back, or you should go back to that rapport building, because then it's that weird dead silence, right? And you got to get good at typing, getting information, and building rapport, because that's where the rest of my rapport is built, right? And we go back to those silly conversations of whatever we were having while I'm writing the application. So so rapport, we're going with guided questions. Now it's the FIF, and this is a really big one on diagnosage, right? This is where you truly find out if they even need it or not, right? And y'all have to, I would even say, go into the appointment trying to find out if they don't need it. Think about that, right? Like do a really good job to be like, hey, you know what? I want to find out if this family doesn't need this coverage. Think about that, right? Because that means you're going to have to ask very intentional questions of what they got in place, how much money's coming in, where do they have their money, right? What things are in place? What happens when Mary or John passes away? Because here's the thing, mortgage protection is insurance. Insurance is a form of protection when something bad happens, right? I can't tell you how many times I've sat with a family that, right, husband or wife passes away. They did a really good job of their retirement, right? So many people don't pick, right, take the lower option so that if somebody passes away, the same money continues to go to the house. Nobody picks that option, in case y'all don't know, right, in retirement plans, right? So when somebody retires, they have the option of saying, hey, do you want $6,000 a month? But if you die, Mary gets nothing, right, or gets a very small portion. Or do you want $5,000 a month and it always stays there for you or Mary? right? Nobody picks that option for whatever reason, right? They're thinking of right now that extra 1,000 is way better for me when it's really not, right? So, but you will find a family that did pick that option, right? So, hey, income doesn't change, right? Like, hey, 10,000's rolling in a month. Their bills are only 5,000. They got plenty, right? 5,000's left over. That's what goes into the bank account. Husband, wife passes away. Nothing happens. Guess what? That mortgage protection is not needed. Now they could get it, right? It's a luxury at that point. And that's what I tell them. Hey, at this point, you don't need this coverage. But a lot of families love this as a luxury because why do you want to tap into your bank account, right? When we can have this solved, right, with a payment, right, that the insurance company is going to pay for. And they're like, yeah, no, I'm in, let's do it. Right? Or, hey, you know what? I don't need it because they really don't, right? Like nothing happens, right? Like the whole point of mortgage protection is we protect the mortgage, right? So if the mortgage is not in danger of being lost, right? Like guess what? They don't need mortgage protection. Perfectly fine, right? Pivot. The cool thing is those are very financially sound families. That's going to be a great FIF. I guarantee you that. Right. So, and so go into the appointment when you're looking at the FIF questions and the diagnosis, go into it of, let me see if they don't need this. Because then you have to prove, right? They have to prove to you financially that they don't need this. And let me tell you, right, that's going to be almost nobody, right? Like everyone needs this coverage. No one has enough coverage, right? No one has things in place. No one's even had conversations about this. That's why we get paid the big bucks to have very uncomfortable conversations. That's why it's an emotional sell. So think of that when you're going through the FIF reset, right? Think of, hey, can they prove to me financially, right, that they don't need this coverage, right? And then you use your judgment, and you'll be amazed of how much you uncover because you're like, no, well, maybe they have something else, right? Because they don't have it in the money coming in monthly, right? So do we have anything else in place, right? Like I'll ask in the FIF, right? Once I'm done with everything, hey, I just want to make sure, do we have anything else in place that could act like mortgage protection? Or, right, John, something happens to you, right? You got something set up for Mary. Well, I do have that other 401k that for whatever reason that you asked, right? They didn't divulge, but now it's a proud thing, right? Like, hey, something that you have in place, right? Right, that's going to protect Mary if you're gone. He goes, yeah, well, I have this for her, right? And so that's just a really great question when you're going to the FIF and you feel like, hey, there might be something else, right? Like, hey, anything else you have in place that would, right, protect Mary that you have in place for her? And then it's a proud moment, right? People are proud and they're going to tell you about it versus you just digging into finances and they're like, you don't need to know that, right? So that's just a great way to go through the FIF. And then that's where you truly get to pivot, right? Because that's where you start to find out, because you've asked the questions, you've gone through the appointment, right? And now it's, do they need the full mortgage payoff, right? Do they need as much as I can get them, right? Or do they need something very small? Because at this point, you should have already asked some really good questions, right? And David, you put it so well, right? Like this is where you pivot. Do you need equity protection or do we need to find more coverage, right? Because at this point, with questions that you've asked, right? Because now you know them, right? Like, hey, Mary, right? John goes away and Mary, I just want to make sure, right? Because all the kids live in Wisconsin, right? And in Michigan, and it's just you and John here in Washington. Like, are you staying here? She's like, no, absolutely not. He wanted to come over here because he wants to go fishing all the time, right? So I just followed him, right? Like, no, if I'm selling the house and I'm moving back, right? Because this is a big house, I don't want to clean it. And then it's like, whoo, I need even less coverage, right? Because now we know she's moving, right? So why are we even looking at $150, $200 options, right? Trying to get these right 2 years worth of equity protection. I need 6 months to a year. Like, hey, how fast are the houses selling in your market? Oh, in my neighborhood, you can't even put it up because they're flying off the shelf. Okay, great. So let's look at a 6 month, maybe a 9 month, right? If you need more, let me know. And now I pivoted, right? They hear that we're adjusting to what they want, right? And this is where an equity protection, right? Like it didn't matter, right? Because guess what? I was still probably dealing with a Washington house and $400,000,
And you're
right?
solving their problem.
And I'm
And you're
solving their problem, dude, with like a $6,000 equity protection policy,
Yep.
right? Because it's simply, right, a couple months worth of mortgage payments. And that's where the time, right? And you get to explain that. I don't know, David, I know you were talking about that. Anything on that?
No, I mean, like you really covered it well. It's, it's discovering, first of all, through that FIF form, the FIF, that we go through, what the budget looks like, what the need truly is, and then just presenting a solution to that need. You want to sell this house? Great. Let me make sure that you have runway so that no one has to come out of pocket in the meantime to make sure you're able to. It's really kind of a turnkey process at that point.
Well, and then we can finish it up and leave any questions, right? The last two things is making sure you're not asking for permission to write that application, right? Like, guess what? If you did a proper role and purpose, they okayed it, right? Because in your role and purpose, you said, hey, and today my job is to simply fill out the application for you, right? Usually it's an instant approval. That means you're going to get coverage as of today, right? And if not, it takes a day or two to get approved by the insurance carrier. But once it's approved, they draft out of your account and email you or mail you the policy, depending on what we look at. Does that sound good to you, David? Yep.
Yep.
That was my permission, and that was in the very before I even jumped into my script, right? That was the permission. Now it's what's going to fit their budget, and now they already told me they're moving, and I only need a runway of 6 months, right? So now I show them the options, and man, I bring this up so much because I'm telling y'all are getting yeses and you're not hearing them, right? Like you're not pulling the trigger and you're killing your own selves, or you're making them go think about it and getting, hey, call me tomorrow, right? So once you show options, if they use phrases like, well, this one looks good, that's a yes, right? Don't even change anything. Hey, well, this one looks good. Oh, perfect. Hey, what's that middle initial? Hey, John, I want to make sure you're right. The spelling on your name's correct, right? Like that looks good is a yes. It just wasn't an actual right. Why yes? That looks good, right? Like, hey, you know what? I think we can do that. That is a yes. Hey, oh, this is a lot cheaper than I thought. I think the full one we can do. Pull the trigger, right? Like, do not ask for permission. Again, you go to the application. If they've gotten this far, there's way too many yeses in between. They picked up the phone when you called them. They said yes to the appointment. They actually showed up, right? Like there's too many yeses. If you go even back to the lead, right? Like they received a piece of paper at the house and they either called it or mailed it in, right? There's like 6 or 7 yeses, right, in the appointment. Hey, and then I'm going to fill it out and you're going to have protection. Does that sound good to you? Yes. Okay, great. That's another yes. There's way too many yeses for you to even question little things like that one looks good. I think that's the one for us, right? Just because they don't say, yes, I want this one, right? They're telling you yes in so many other forms. You need to just pull the trigger, right? Like they just want to be guided through the experience, right? And then the next one is, how'd you put the expressing?
Well, Joe, and just because I know we're getting short on time, hit me with I want to think about it. You've done everything right, but you want to think about it. Hit me with I want to think about it.
Right. Well, let me let me think about that. I mean, me and my wife probably need to think about this.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, Joe, I want you to think about it. But truthfully, until we fill out the application and get an answer from the carrier, there's really nothing to even think about yet. So let me go ahead and get logged in and we'll get started on that.
I love that, right? And that's what I was reading. And so here's the reality of it. And I want y'all to grab this concept too. They are thinking about nothing until that policy is approved, right? Like I can't tell y'all how many times, right? Like they're like, oh yeah, let me think about it, right? And I'm telling y'all, I've made this mistake for years until I corrected it. Right. Okay. Yeah. Think about it. And then they're like, oh, sweet. They call me back tomorrow. We had the appointment. Yes. I want the $100,000 option. Sweet. Let me fill it out. Oh, I'm sorry, David, you got declined. What were they thinking about? What did you allow them that you didn't allow, that you weren't being truthful to them? right? So until that application is submitted and you got an answer, they are thinking about nothing. And you be confident enough and have the posture to tell them that. So when I get to think about it, I'm like, hey, look, I just want you to know, right? You're kind of thinking about nothing. I literally tell them that. You're kind of thinking about nothing. You know, it looks like it should get approved, but I don't make that final decision, right? I'm just the underwriter, right? Everything you've told me sounds like it should be good, but let me tell you, I can't tell you. There's so many surprises sometimes come up, right, because of medications, and then I poke the bear, right? You know, we talked about the diabetes, or we talked about the heart attack 6 months ago, or whatever it may be, right? And I'm like, hey, so my job is just make sure we get you approved. Once you're approved, right, well, you can actually think about it, right? Which one do you think, right, you want to at least see if we can get you qualified for? Oh, well then let's do this one, right? I'm not asking for permission. Right? Like they got to give me a hard no, right? Like Jeff, right? Me and you learned this from Chris Cook, right? Like you need the hard no. Don't be afraid to get the no right there, right? Like don't be afraid to, oh, think about it. Yes, they're going to think about it, right? Maybe it's tomorrow. No, that's a 10% app, right? Write that number down. Anyone that tells you think about it and right, they're going to rebook 10% of those, you're going to get a yes. That's it. Write that number, fall in love with it. But you got to be really good at yes or no right now, right? And there's nothing to think about, right? Like you use that phrase, there's nothing to think about until the carrier approves you. I'm not the one that makes that final decision, right? Americo does, or Mutual. The really cool thing is I can tell you in 7 minutes. Let me tell you in 7 minutes if you're approved or not. Oh, okay. Then they're excited. Well, hey, you know what? It did approve. Sweet. Oh, okay, perfect. Well, then what's next? Nothing. I mean, we're done. Okay, great. There you go. You got an app, right? Because you weren't asking for approval. You weren't asking for permission. These people want coverage. They just need somebody to help them through the process, right? And, right, they needed a little nudge, right? Like, hey, let's get you approved because, right, I just dealt with this last week or the week before. A client of mine had a policy. She had a $500,000 policy through SBLI. She let it lapse in December. She's calling me back at the middle of April because she got diagnosed with lupus and a whole bunch of other stuff. And now she's like, well, Joe, let's just get that policy back in place. $500,000 policy for a single mom with 4 kids. I can't help her. She got diagnosed April 11th. Now she's calling me for more coverage. It hurts me so bad because I tried a whole bunch of stuff and I can't. She had a 500,000, like these are real people. They need a nudge, right? They need a nudge. Y'all just remember that, right? And you'll help a whole bunch of families. I hope all this, right? Again, right? Anything, literally go apply it in your next appointment and throw it in band that, hey, it helped you. And we appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for being on the call.
Thank you,
I just want to
Joe.
thank Donnell for her valuable insight. It was just
So
just
good.
so wonderful
So
today.
good.
Thank you, Donnell.
Her and Donna.
I appreciate that, guys. Great call. Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.